So tonight here, we're here to talk about Michigan school funding and how it impacts you and how it impacts our community. We want to hear from you about the concerns you have in your schools and offer some options for how you can get involved. So as you can see, we have tonight's agenda up on the screen. We're going to share a little bit about the organizations here co-hosting this event. We're going to talk about meeting the moment in which we're at right now, how schools are funded, so we're going to dive into it a little bit more and talk about the 3 different areas of funding. And finally, we're going to talk about our plan to win. I do want to pause for a minute because I know school funding in particular might not have been what brought everyone here today, but education and public schools are something that unite all of us and something that we all care about. So we will have plenty of time today to talk about other concerns and things that are on your mind. We're going to be moving around, talking and sharing our own perspectives, but I do want to drive home the point that tonight we're going to really dive deep into school funding and how that impacts all of the different areas of education and the things that our students and our communities are facing today. So, now you know where we're headed. We're going to introduce the co-host of tonight's event. For those of you who I haven't yet had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Becca Hogan. I am on the PTOC, which is the Parent Teacher Organization Council board this year. We represent all of the PTOs across Ann Arbor School District. I have 3 kids, one of whom is in Abbott Elementary, and the other 2 who will soon follow her to Abbott Elementary. And I'm going to pass it over to some of our partners to introduce themselves. So first, I'm going to add Perry come up and introduce herself.
Hey everybody, I'm Perry, she, her, hers from the Student Advocacy Center. I am also a parent of a senior, junior at Y High. Student Advocacy Center believes education is a right, and we work to help kids get back in school if they're out of school, and if school is not working for them, to get it to work for them. So we have a statewide helpline anyone can call if they're in an education crisis. And we do education mentoring in Ann Arbor, IPSI, Detroit, and education advocacy. That's kind of what we do. Who's doing Aspire? Stacy? It's a long way to come. Get ready.
Or she can just use her teacher voice.
This is true. I do have that. Hi. Thanks for coming out, everybody. My name is Stacy Ebrin, and I'm a mom of 2 boys. One of them is at Lawton Elementary, and one is at Green Hills. I'm also an aspiring teacher. I just finished my student teaching at Clay Middle School. And I just started teaching 7th grade math at Slauson Middle School. So busy day, 112 mathematicians. But I'm one of the founding members of Ann Arbor School Parents Intent on Racial Equity, or Aspire. And, you know, our mission really is to have people's voices heard who are right in the middle of this racial equity gap that we have in our community. And our job is to uplift them and to connect them to resources and to try to improve the achievement and opportunity gaps that exist in Ann Arbor Public Schools. Who's next?
Sarah and Dan.
Okay. Sorry.
I mean, I trip over a student's board like that in the classroom once a day. I'm Sarah Anton. I'm a Scarlett parent. I was at Mitchell for 8 years. I have a 6th grader and an 8th grader at Scarlett. I'm a Huron teacher. And I am part of the Ann Arbor Education Association, which is the teachers' union for Ann Arbor. Hi, Ari. And Dan and I are members of the action team.
Yep, and I'm Dan Crowley. I'm also here on teacher now. I was at Forsyth Middle School last year, but I was also an Abbott Elementary graduate. And I was at Forsyth as a middle school student and Pioneer as a high school student, so it's nice to be back home.
Yeah, we, as an action team, we've really enjoyed sort of like inserting ourselves in spaces to have conversations with other stakeholders of education, community members and parents and students, and thinking having really good thought partners about how we're all participating in the betterment of public education, especially in our area.
Thank you so much to our co-hosts for joining us in tonight's event. I'd also like to give a quick special shout out to several elected officials we have in the space. So we have Rep. Carrie Reingans, Senator Jeff Irwin. I think 3 trustees. Can you stand up? I think we got Rima. Thank you all so much for joining us. We're really happy to have you here. We are going to do a little dive into a parent perspective. So I'd like to invite Ms. Patricia Davis to join us up here and share some of her experience and perspectives as a caregiver in the public schools.
Good evening, everyone. I'm a little nervous. But I'm a grandparent of a 6th grader at Tappan Middle School. And I miss the intervention specialists that we had at the school. They played such an important role for our children there. And we lost some very good intervention specialists. And the intervention specialist for my granddaughter was someone that she could go and talk to, you know, someone that wasn't gonna judge her, criticize her, or put her down, but just someone that she can talk to. You know, when Perry asked me about speaking, I made a couple of notes of some of my concerns, and those were, you know, we have our kids who have no one they can go and talk to regarding their issues, kids that are definitely gonna be left behind, trust issues with adults. We have a lot of adults in the school system right now that don't even have empathy for our kids. I think some of them personally need to be trained, you know, for these type of things. Thankfully, my granddaughter, she do have a good support team at Tappan, but also with that, because my granddaughter have had so much trauma in her life. And with that trauma, she is so misunderstood. She gets bullied at school. She get called names at school. And my granddaughter has actually had to go into the inpatient hospital. You know, she just recently got out about a week ago. Excuse me, I don't mean to get emotional, but again, I miss our intervention specialists because they had sympathy and empathy for our kids. They cared about what happened to our kids. That was that person that my granddaughter could go and talk to and open up to and share her feelings and her thoughts about. Don't get me wrong, she has a social worker at Tappan that she can go to. But I'm thankful also because at Tappan they allow her, when she's having a bad day or when somebody is bullying her and calling her out of her name, they let her call me. And even like today, she called me and said, Grandma, I'm having a rough day. Because she didn't have that intervention specialist that she can go to and she can tell them how she was feeling and what she was going through. But again, the other thing was my granddaughter, like I say, I done had her for 11 years now. And I wasn't expecting to be raising another child because all my kids are grown with their own kids. But also, I believe my granddaughter is my assignment because with all the trauma that she has been through and the diagnosis that I have been given regarding her and stuff. And I try to be her biggest supporter. I give her positive affirmations. You know, I try to explain to her what a friend is and what an associate is. She just got her feelings hurt by what's supposed to be her best friend. And, you know, I want her to be around positive role models. You know, when she goes to school, I want her to see adults as being someone that's going to look out for her, someone that's going to have her back, someone that, you know, if she is having a bad day, she don't have to always call me, but she can go to that particular teacher, the principal, or whoever and say, I just need to talk. You know, she has some rough days, don't get me wrong, you know, but no child should have to be in school and don't have nobody they can talk to, you know. And I know the teachers, they having a hard time too with what they're going through. I commend teachers on what they're doing, I really do, you know, but they need that support. And I don't want my granddaughter to be left behind. I don't want nobody's child to be left behind. But two, I believe kids should know that they have a voice. That, you know, as adults, we love them, we care about them, we want the best for them. And I just want our intervention specialists back. Because we need them. They are the core of the school and what's going on in the school. And again, like I said, I'm not ashamed to say it, that was the worst mistake they could have made, was getting rid of the intervention specialist. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to invite our teachers up here to share a little bit more about their perspective.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
If you're a teacher in the room, can you raise your hand? So if you have, nice guys, thanks. We're deep tonight. So if you have any further questions, you can reach out to the people who just raised their hand. You can also reach out to Tamala Bell, our AAEA Vice President, who's here. So just if things come up that we talk about. I'm actually not here to represent my story. I was very fortunate to not be in a position to be cut last spring, last year on, because of where I fell in seniority. So I'm here to tell Caitlin Solar's story, who is a teacher at Pittsfield. Caitlin had a baby 6 days ago, so she's not here. But I want to tell you, but what I do know about Caitlin, and not just because she's my friend and colleague, but because I've been a Title I teacher and a Title I parent for a very long time, is that when Caitlin was released from being the librarian at Pittsfield last year, which is a Title I school, and if we know anything about our Title I buildings, that's a building that has been designated to receive, federal funds because there are risk factors involved in the population that they serve, right? So without going too deep into that, children with risk factors often need supports that don't just exist on paper. They exist in communities, they exist in relationships, they exist in the little things that teachers do that no one sees, or that admin do, or that specials teachers do that are teaching the entire building, right? So when Caitlin was cut as a teacher, a librarian last year, her position was eliminated from the building. And so now someone who was in the building and had been in that building for years in various capacities as a librarian and before that a classroom teacher, now instead of having like that face, and libraries are safe and beautiful spaces for kids, right? So you're not having a full-time person in that role and in that safe place. Now you're having a wonderful person travel to that building a couple of times a week, but when that person isn't there, that space is closed. That safety is closed, that access is closed, right? So it's not just like access to books, and it's not just access to that place, but it's literally taking someone who is an integral part of that community and that support and displacing them. Now, Caitlin was very lucky to be offered, after she was eliminated from her library position, a classroom position. So luckily, a wonderful educator is still in Ann Arbor Public Schools and is still in Pittsfield specifically. But I think that we really need to take into consideration, yes, as teachers, we want to be gainfully employed, and we like our buildings and our colleagues and our students and our families, and we don't necessarily want to leave. But there's further damage that's done when we remove people from places, especially places that create resources out of nothing for the needs that they have to serve, right? So it's damaging in all situations, but I do think that like Caitlin's story is unique because there is something particular about the services and the things that she was providing to that particular community that were moving her and removing that safety in that space. And we just are creating a lot of solutions to problems that people don't even hear when we're in those places and we have the trust of families and teachers and our colleagues to get stuff done, right? I think every teacher in the room knows exactly what I mean. So I want to honor Caitlin's story tonight by saying, you know, budget cuts and budget deficits and things like that are hard, and neither Dan nor I teach math. So, you know, like, but we understand a budget, I promise you.
Yeah.
But my point is that it's more than just a bottom line. It is people and community and long-term impacts on people who've really built those relationships. And it's something that we really have to consider when we're thinking about, you know, we're more than just room assignments and an FTE, right? Yeah. So.
I was one of the teachers that was laid off last year. I, as I mentioned, graduated from Ann Arbor Public Schools. I spent 10 years away teaching in Denver Public Schools, doing a Master's of Education there. And one of the reasons I did that was growing up as an Ann Arbor Public Schools student, I saw the need firsthand for like the kind of training that you mentioned. I was your sort of traditional undiagnosed ADHD student who was constantly told, like, you need to sit still, you need to learn to control your body. I had teachers say things to me that, like, no child should hear. Remember in 7th grade, I asked to take an advanced math class. You middle school parents probably know this route. When you go to 8th grade, this is when you can take an accelerated math class that puts you on a college track. My 7th grade teacher said, why would you take that class? That's for kids going to college. And so I think one of the things I realized from an early age was, like, I needed to see mentors in my schools, and I found one in 11th grade who inspired me to go into education. I also found one in 8th grade who developed in me a love of writing. So I teach English now, and I was fortunate when I was hired into Ann Arbor Public Schools to take over for this teacher, my old 8th grade language arts teacher. She gave me the keys to her classroom, and it was the exact same room that I was in. I found my old book there, and I was teaching next door to another Ann Arbor graduate, and I was really feeling like, wow, this is what community feels like. I'm back in my hometown. Natalie Binder is right next door to me, and Kelly Bird, my old gym teacher, was there. All these faces that I'd grown up with, so it was devastating when we got the news that there was going to be layoffs. I knew as a new hire that I was going to be just one of the first cut. And so I spent most of that rest of that year making these really hard decisions where I had to tell my students in our Dungeons and Dragons club, which had almost 80 members or something massive.
That's really good.
We had to tell those students, I can't be a part of the club anymore. I can't chair the club or be the teacher sponsor because I now have to do countless hours of community organizing to try to save every single job possible. When the layoff notifications went through, I think similar to Caitlin's story, one of the biggest things I felt was just this powerlessness. Like, we put hundreds of hours into community organizing to raise awareness of the impact that these budget cuts would have on students. Things like firing intervention specialists, basically a free license to do forced transfers. But really what this amounted to was people who are extraordinarily far removed from our actual buildings, actual student populations, making decisions without consulting the folks right there on the ground. And one of my mentors in Denver always used to say about community organizing that the people closest to the problems have to be a part of the solution. What I really saw in Ann Arbor was we haven't learned how to do that yet. So to our board members, our elected officials, folks here tonight, I really just urge you to listen to our parents, our community members, the people who are experiencing these problems daily, because what you might see as a line item on budget that is incredibly important and represents quite a lot, it sometimes just takes coming to these events and listening to people to hear the human element and understand some of those intangibles that we don't always realize. So, thank you.
All right, now we have some time that we'd like to hear from your voice. We've heard some caregiver and some teacher perspectives, and we know we have amazing people in this room who are ready to have their voice heard as well. So what we'd like you to do is look on your table. There should be some Post-it notes. If there aren't, we have some extras up front here. We'd like you to take about 5 minutes or so to write down what are you most concerned about in our schools. Once you have your idea written down, you can go ahead and put it up on one of the 4 Post-its, the big Post-its that are up here, and take a minute to stay there, look at other people's ideas, and think about what's right. Go ahead and do that.
It's a little sad.
More support for kids. More support for kids. Yes, that's an overall theme. What else?
Pleased to see that I'm not the only one except that there's a drastic shortage of support staff.
Not the only, yes, not the only one. There is a drastic shortage of support staff. Yes, I noticed that too. What else?
People being heard and believed when they share. People bring a lot of testimony that I saw in a couple of different spaces, not feeling like that's absorbed or impactful.
Not feeling heard or feeling like your story's believed. Thank you.
Mike brought up accessibility in buildings. So buildings aren't always accessible for students and teachers and other staff who have disabilities.
Accessibility, yes, definitely. Any others? All right, well, we've got a good start here. Yeah, go ahead.
We're losing a lot of some of our best teachers.
Yes, we are losing a lot of our best teachers, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you all so much for sharing those. I'm gonna pass it over to Stacy. Talk about meeting the moment.
Hello. I'm good now. Okay. Yes, there we go. All right, so prior to teaching, well, I'm a math person, so I'm all about numbers. So I have some good numbers and some bad numbers. But I think together we can meet the moment that we're in right now. Michigan has some of the lowest test scores in the nation. In fact, 31 states scored higher in 4th grade reading than Michigan. 25 states had higher math scores for 8th grade students than we did. We have one of the lowest graduation rates for students with disabilities in the country, which is not surprising given our shortage of counselors and social workers and school psychologists, behavior intervention specialists. And what we have is an ongoing mental health crisis with chronic absenteeism for our students. Almost 30% of Michigan students were chronically absent in 2023 to 2024 school year. 30%, okay? And our students' access to counselors is one of the worst in the country. We have a definite counseling shortage here when demand is at an all-time high. We are second to the state of Arizona for the highest student-to-counselor ratio in the nation. 671 students to 1 counselor. 671. Hello. And then we wonder why we have a mental health crisis. All right, so teacher hat on. I'm gonna give you a quiz. Does money matter? Which of these is correct? A, research has shown that how much we spend has no real impact on student outcomes. Or B, research has shown that how much we spend has a significant impact on student incomes. Yes, good job. So additional school resources can improve outcomes for students, especially low-income students. It's an investment that's worth making. A 10% increase in per pupil spending each year for all 12 years of public school is associated with a nearly 10% higher wage and a 6.1% reduction in the annual incidence of adult poverty. By one estimate, the lifetime earnings of Michigan's current K-12 students could increase by $27 billion, with a B, dollars, if the educational achievement matched the national average. We can do better. Imagine how much we could reduce poverty if we invested in our children, especially our economically disadvantaged children. Imagine how much we could make a difference. We know that students taught in smaller elementary classes are more likely to not only attend, but complete college. And this is especially true for our poorest third of students. But this costs more money. It costs more money to have smaller class sizes. But there's an impact with that, because a 22% increase in per pupil funding directed at low-income students can eliminate, hear me when I say this, eliminate the achievement gap that we see in our schools. Just a 22% increase. And we know that increases in teacher wages decrease high school dropout. Again, this is about affecting generations to come. This is about ending generational poverty. This is about fairness and equity and inclusion and the things that they don't want us to talk about at the federal government. But that's affecting our nation, and we need to do something about it. Okay, teacher hat again. How well are Michigan schools funded? Which of these is correct? A, funding for Michigan schools has stayed relatively steady for the past 25 years. B, funding for Michigan schools has declined severely over the past 25 years. Or C, funding for Michigan schools is at its highest point now in the last 25 years.
Is this absolute numbers?
All three are.
Adjusted for inflation. Look at this slide. You don't have to be a mathematician to read this slide, okay? Our total education revenue in Michigan, inflation adjusted, in billions of dollars. Look how much it's decreased from 1995 to 2024. Do you see that drop? This is what's happening to our funding. And we are dead last in terms of increases in total revenue across the nation in education spending. Dead last, Michigan is. Gosh, I guess I get to be a teacher all day. When I get to go home, I'm a teacher. When I'm at work. Okay, how do we get more money? Which of these is correct? Compared to other states, Michigan already has high taxes, and the richest families are paying the top rates. Or B, compared to other states, Michigan has low taxes, and the richest families are paying the lowest rates. Yeah, who pays? Here's what families at different income levels pay in state and local taxes as a share of their income. And what you see is that the people at the top are paying less than the people at the bottom. And you also see, when you look at this slide, I love data, just a slight increase in the effective tax rate. Look at the results that it yields in terms of national rank. We're 8.6%. Imagine where we would be if we could increase that to 12% in this state. So our elected representatives who are here, I'm also a public official, so I get it. But we have a lot of work to do. We need to support them so that they can change this number at our state and so that we can change where we're ranked nationally, because our children, all of our children deserve that. And now Perry's gonna come and give you some more information. Thank you.
So before we dive into how to get more money for schools and specific actions we can take about a lot of the concerns you raise, and how to advocate for more resources for our schools, we kind of want to take a step back and do a little deep dive. My kids make fun of me because I love to do deep dives, and make sure you understand kind of at a high level how Michigan schools are funded, what the trends are, and where we are today. Super exciting, right?
Yeah.
I'm a social worker, so I'm gonna try to make this as I'm gonna try my best, y'all, okay? I'm not a teacher, but I am gonna give you a quiz. Are you ready? All right, where do we get our money? Most of the money for schools comes from our local taxes. Most comes from the state. Most comes from the feds. What's your guess? Yell it out.
B.
I heard a C, federal. What else?
B.
You heard B. Okay. Yes. It is B. It is B. You see, federal is actually pretty low. I've seen different numbers. I've heard our elected say 10%, but then in different things I see 17%. So anyway, it seems less, between 10 and 17%, 11. Thanks. I'm going to use what Jeff says. Senator Irwin, excuse me. 11% feds, right? And let's see. I just lost my place. Anyway, that's fine. You can see the state is the most. And then where does our state school aid money come from? Any guesses?
Student count.
What's that?
Student count. Number of.
Sure, okay, yeah, the student count. They count the number of students, they have parties, try to get students in, that's part of it. But like, where does the actual money come from?
Sales tax.
Sales tax,
Oh,
property tax,
Villages.
villages, what else?
Right.
Yeah.
It's 45% sales tax, what do you want?
No, don't tell us that! All right, fine. I see what's happening here. Yeah.
One of those.
I see what's happening here, okay. The sales and use tax is the highest, for sure. I usually, people, when we talk to a lot of people, they say the lottery, but the lottery is only like 6%, right? Does anything there surprise you guys? No? The personal income tax is about 17%. Anything you guys want to add about that?
Jeff just said that income tax.
I didn't think it was quite that big.
Oh.
But it's, I think.
Let's make it bigger! Okay, we already saw this, but I do want to acknowledge, especially since we do have some great electeds in the room, that Michigan has made historic investments.
Well, when I started,
Right.
actually is when that spike happened. But I came in as a freshman in the first Democratic trifecta in 40
Right.
years.
Anytime it goes up, there were Democrats, the whole time it's going down, there's Republicans.
I mean, I didn't say that, that's your guys' observation, it's just interesting to me.
I would add to that.
All Republicans have done is take money away from kids. For a whole
And not
time,
only is
I've
that
been
an
in
effect
public
of Democrats getting elected, the first Democratic trifecta since 1983.
Right. Finally,
Which is
just a big
huge.
spike, right.
The other thing I'll say about this is that one of the things that the governor said when she first got elected, that a lot of us other Democrats in the legislature were saying, and have been saying for years, is that we need a more, a formula that is more balanced and that provides more equity in the way that schools get their dollars. So there's a higher allocation, for instance, for at-risk students or things like that. So one of the things that this chart doesn't include, but I wanted to mention, is that we've also leaned heavier into that approach. And so you've seen, some of the inequities at the state level less.
Thank you, yes. So I think it's important to say that elections matter, and that whenever we have elections, that we are asking our elected officials or people who want to run for office if they are going to be investing in public education, because money matters, right? So our schools, I don't want to just stay in the positive too much here. Our schools were receiving about the same amount of money in '22, adjusted for inflation, as they were in 2013. Our schools were receiving $4 billion less per year in '22 than what was provided in 2004. Okay? So let's not get too ahead of ourselves with the excitement. This slide shows where we would be if we would have maintained constant tax effort 2009. Isn't that so interesting? So if we were just taxing at the same effort, we'd be like way up here. And instead we're way down here. And I was talking to somebody about David Arson. Yes. I don't know if anyone knows David Arson. He's an amazing retired economist, professor emeritus from MSU. He and lots of others did an amazing study called the School Finance Research Collaborative, and they actually did an adequacy study. So they actually said, here's how much money, not for optimal schools, okay, but for adequate schools. So don't get too ahead of ourselves, because it's frankly still a low number. But where do we need to be adequate? So see that little black dot, that's where we would need to be to have adequate funding in Michigan.
Say the number,
5 billion more.
Oh, sorry, today's dollars, well, I am gonna say it, but I'll say it now, yes, $5 billion more we need, okay? I think it's particularly important, I mean, we kind of already have said this a little bit, Stacy said it, but that we are particularly not great at funding equity. And look, y'all, I live in Ipsy, I'm gonna be real with you. I live in Ipsy, I have a kid who goes to Huron, and I have a kid who's in Ipsy, so I got some feels about equity. I have feels about one of my kids is worth $500, whatever, more than the other kid. And we need Ann Arbor to stand up for equity too.
Yes.
Because there are deep inequities, even in our own community. I just wanna say that, I want y'all to add that, okay? So we are ranked 36 of 46 states in the nation for funding gaps that negatively impact low-income students. Our foundation allowance was actually the 6th highest in the nation among states, but we're ranking at the bottom 15 for equity. So that's not okay, right? We have to really be putting that hat on. So where are we at? Yes, here's the number again, okay? We are underfunding our schools by close to $5 billion. We are 50th among the states in total revenue growth between those years. I asked Arson today, I was like, why did you say 95 to 2015 and 90, I'm like, so anyway, 95 to 2022, and they'll let us know when the new numbers come out. 60% decline in inflation-adjusted at-risk funding per at-risk pupil from 94 to 2017. And just in general, like very poor matching, to your point, Senator Irwin, of matching state revenues to service costs for high-need students. Boo, come on, let's go. Boo! Come on! We got some work to do, am I right? Because money matters, right? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, all right. We're going to talk about 3 areas of funding. Why are we talking about these specific areas? Because we have done work around the state. We're part of the Michigan Education Justice Coalition. We did surveys around the state with families who are impacted every day by inequities in school funding. And these are the 3 areas that they prioritized. So this is coming directly from families and students, particularly in mostly districts of color. So this is the areas that they lifted up. And when we go to Advocacy Day, April 29th, which we hope many of you will join us, these are 3 of the areas that we're going to be really focused on. So I want to tell you a little bit about them. Cool?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So the first one is 31A, also known as at-risk. I don't really like that, but that's what it's called. I don't like that name, but anyway. It's a critical piece of our school funding system, and it helps students overcome significant barriers, kind of like the barriers that Patricia was talking about a little bit ago. It's focused on outcomes like student attendance, reading and math, being career and college ready by high school graduation. It can't be used for administrative costs. There might be some exceptions to that now, but it's really supposed to be used for extra academic support, for medical, mental health, counseling service, school health clinics, instructional or behavioral coaches, intervention specialists, restorative practitioners, anti-bullying or crisis intervention programs. It's that, I don't know, didn't we talk about that stuff, right, you guys? We were talking about the support. Yep. This money can help pay for those things. Eligible districts, Ann Arbor does get 31A at-risk funding. It's based on the number of students in the prior year determined to be at risk. Does anyone know how we count? What are some of the qualifications? Does anyone know? I don't know. Free and reduced lunch. They have SNAP benefits. TANF, they're homeless.
Immigrant refugee status.
Yep. The other one is foster care. Yes, thank you. Okay. And by the way, the number of students who are eligible for 31A is dramatically increasing, but the funding is not keeping up. So the way this money is distributed is kind of profound, actually, because Michigan made history in 2023 joining the nation's first 10 states with a funding formula that accounts for concentrations of poverty. So we call that the Opportunity Index. You might hear that thrown around. It's the way the money is distributed. And it basically means that the districts that are in communities with the highest concentrations of poverty are going to get the most per student. So there's 5 bands, I think it's 5 bands. So if you have the highest concentration of poverty, you're going to get slightly more per student than less. That might mean that districts other than Ann Arbor might get more for those individual students. Let me tell you about those districts. They don't have PTOs, a lot of them. They don't have a lot of the other resources that we have here. Ann Arbor gets lots of 31A money, okay, that's not what we're saying, but how do we make sure that the districts that need the most are getting more to deal with those resources? And so there was just a study that came out about concentration of poverty. 37% of Michigan's poor students live in high poverty districts, one of the highest rates in the country. This is a big issue in our state. As poverty increases, there's really unique challenges that emerge. And even those of you in Ann Arbor schools that have schools that maybe have higher concentrations of Title I schools, you know what I'm talking about. But other districts might know even more. They might have limited access to health care, causing students to miss substantial learning time due to increased illness or untreated chronic conditions. They are exposed to violence more. And they experience levels of trauma that affect school performance, health, well-being, behavior. Districts serving these areas could use additional resources, right, to deploy specialized transportation, trauma counselors, create smaller class sizes. These are the things that all of these schools need, including the Title I schools in Ann Arbor. And they have also other challenges. Really, the more concentrated poverty has higher challenges in recruiting and retaining highly qualified teachers. And I know that's a problem everywhere. So if we really want to be good stewards of our money and really target where the money goes, we need more money for 31A to close opportunity gaps for kids with low income backgrounds. And I think Stacy made a good point about that earlier. So that's 31A. Any questions, quick questions about it, or anything that anyone wants to add that I'm forgetting about it? So we're asking, it hasn't been fully funded, so right now they've been increasing it about the same amount as the per pupil, so it's not fully funded. They need to increase it much more. Yeah.
Is this the funding that we lost in last year's budget, but then got back separately?
No, you're thinking about 31AA.
No.
Get into that.
Oh,
Yes.
I worked in Title I for years. Could I share just with the room too one thing about Title I funding too? So one of the things, like you mentioned PTOs, we were in a co-located campus where we had a Title I school and then an affluent school underneath. And most of our Title I funding went to just buying the supplies that most kids show up to school with. And then on top of that, like the school downstairs threw a bake sale and raised $75,000. And that was more than our school PTO fund had,
Right.
10 times what it had ever been.
Right.
So I think like one of the ways when we look at that money, it's super admirable that we do that, but it also causes a lot of people to feel like that problem solved. We threw a few extra dollars that way, but it really doesn't close the gap
Yeah.
at all.
It's got, I should have written down, I don't remember, there's a long ways to go before the Opportunity Index is fully funded in Michigan. But we're going to Lansing April 29th to ask our electeds to prioritize increasing it more. I think right now it's proposed like 4% or something like that. I don't remember exactly. Special education. All right, let's talk about special education a little bit. You may not be surprised to learn Michigan is not funding special education at the levels it needs to. I just attended a 2-hour meeting this afternoon about how we change funding for special education in the state. But each year, significant portions of special education costs remain unfunded even after receiving federal, state, and ISD revenue. So for example, in 2020-21, districts and ISDs incurred $655 million in uncompensated special education costs, which means that then their general fund has to cover those costs. So it's a lot of money. Michigan is one of only 6 states in our country that fund through a reimbursement system. That reimbursement rate is 28.6. It's one of the lowest rates in the country. Gosh, we're just like getting so many awards, aren't we? Not the kind of awards you want to get, but there you go. And that hasn't increased since the state was forced to begin payments due to a lawsuit 40 years ago. I think I wanted to say a little positive thing, which is that when the coalition, the statewide coalition that Student Advocacy Center has been really proud to be a part of, and so is Aspire, we said, hey, why aren't special education students, why aren't the districts getting 100% per pupil for those students? It used to be like 75, 80%. They're full people, they come, right? They get extra services, but they're full people. And that's something that we won. When we come together and we raise important issues, we do win things. And that's one of the things we won. So just to know, yeah. It just was like common sense. I was like, I don't understand. What are you saying? Anyway, the extra cost required to educate these students is too low, right? And underinvesting in special education impacts everyone, of course, right? Because it means fewer resources for all students. So that's an area that we are asking for increased funding for. You were asking about 31AA, maybe. I hope this is what you were asking for, maybe not. It gets confusing, 31A, 31AA. There's so many numbers and letters, I can't remember them. But Michigan students are facing a mental health crisis. Anxiety, depression, and trauma are on the rise, and yet schools, as we heard today, are lacking the resources to respond. In the 22-23 school year, Michigan established the 31AA mental health and safety grants. And that was a huge, we should clap for that, yes. That was amazing. Our young people in Detroit in particular, and IPSI and other places, this was their biggest priority. And even we just did a whole activity with our young people where we made them create their own budget for their school district. It was very interesting what they decided to fund or not fund. I don't know, teacher salaries didn't do as well. And some of the schools, we're like, wait, what now? For mental health, consistently with all of the groups, was something that they wanted funded more. So that was, I learned a lot from them. So our young people are really asking for that. The first year that this was established, it was $150 million. Then it got increased to $328 million. Last year it got slashed to $25 million until we all raised our voices and said, oh, what are you talking about? And those funds and the supplemental got raised to $150 million. So this year we're advocating to get back up to the $300 million. So school districts really have consistent, ongoing funding that is really targeted for this mental health support. Those are three, there's other areas that we're going to be talking about, but those are the three that our young people, that our parents, our caregivers, and often our educators also are saying, these are priorities. And when we go to Lansing at the end of the month, yeah, we're going to be talking about those things. Okay. Becca, do you want to, I can just ask this question.
Yeah, you go for it, yeah.
Okay. So we just gave you a lot of information, and we want you just to talk to people around you, kind of how is this sitting with you, what's rising to the top for you, and then we might have a few people share. We want to talk about some ways you can actually get involved. We are going to give you some concrete things today, but we're really going to encourage you guys to really stay connected, right? Because I think there's lots of reasons for us to be showing up in a lot of different spaces with a collective voice. But we want to give you a few opportunities specific today, okay? So first is Advocacy Day, which I've mentioned a couple times. Student Advocacy Center, Aspire, and other folks, it's a coalition around the state, are part of Michigan Education Justice Coalition. We've done this for several years. Some people here have come. Yes, we've had school board members join us. It's really a powerful day. And honestly, I don't know about y'all, but any moment to come together with like-minded folks who care about public education, for me, feels pretty darn good. So I hope you'll consider coming. We are really trying to advocate for the top priorities that our families asked us to. Not all of our families can come. A lot of people are working during the day, so if you are able to come, that's great. There is another rally happening this Saturday if you can't do it. So we'll send out all that information. So if you're registered, I'm gonna ask if you want the slides. I'll send out the slides and other stuff. But there's another rally happening the Saturday before if you can't make it the day of. Okay?
It's very fun, it's easy to do, you don't have to have experience talking to legislators, they'll put you in a group with people that have it. People carpool, it's nice time, so if you can't make it at all, it's worth even taking a day of PTO.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear our young people are planning like street theater. I don't know what that means exactly, but I'm excited to see what they're planning. And it's been really cool to watch some of the same kids come back year after year and see their growth and confidence as they're speaking. So it's intergenerational. Yes, you can bring your children. I'm so mad that my youngest, I thought he was gonna come. And I was like, gotta track me, whatever. It's like we're fighting for your schools. Okay. All right, Suzanne, you want to come up for Aspire?
Well,
Hey everyone, I'm Susanna Keller and I'm a member of Aspire. Aspire stands for Ann Arbor School Parents Intent on Racial Equity. We're a multiracial group of parents, caregivers, and community leaders and educators who are committed to advancing racial equity within Ann Arbor Public Schools. And so all the stuff we've been talking about tonight, we work to eliminate the achievement and opportunity gaps and improve the educational experience for Black and Brown students in AAPS and to advocate for the voices of Black and Brown families to be heard. If you're interested in more information, this QR code will take you to the form where you can give us your contact information. And we'll add you to our mailing list, and you can make a note if you're interested in being involved in a larger way, and we'll get in touch with you individually around that, but please let us know. I'll just also say my other hat that I'm wearing tonight, is that okay? But don't, I probably will to a dramatic exit. Is that kind of here? Yeah. I also coordinate the PTOC's Equity Committee. So we are working to bring folks together in conversation around equity issues across PTOs in Ann Arbor. And I also just want to raise up that we are in the midst of our annual fundraiser. All the money that we raise goes directly to Title I schools PTOs. Stacy is holding up the flyer that has a QR code. I have small flyers you could take over there, and this is our efforts while we work to advance the conversation around systemic inequities across PTOs. We also are trying to do something in the moment to address those inequities, and this money that we raise goes directly to Title I schools PTOs, no strings attached. And we have a $30,000 match from PTO Thrift Store. So we're at around $21,000. We have a month to raise the last $9,000. Even if you can just help spread the word, we get feedback every year. This is our third year doing it. This money really does make an impact. And I do think the no strings attached piece is so important that school PTOs have the autonomy to use that money however they want. So anyway, that's my plug for that. Thank you.
Game changer.
All right, we learned that money matters. How do we get more money? That's what we're going to talk about a little bit. I got to get better at the call and response. Later, okay. So first, the way we get the money matters, right? We know how much income, I hope you all know, there's a lot of income inequality in our country. And we know that everyday Americans are actually really hurting right now. And so we have to be really careful about how we craft solutions so that the people who need the support the most aren't the ones that are carrying the burden of how we create those solutions. So we're really proud to be part of a statewide coalition at MEJC that is exploring a ballot initiative to create a graduated income tax. So right now, Michigan has a flat tax where everyone pays the same percentage of their income, whether you're a billionaire or you earn $25,000 a year. And so we're saying that it's time that folks have to pay their fair share. That's right. So in order to do that, we actually have to change the state constitution. And that requires a ballot initiative. It's changed by the people. I don't know about y'all, but it feels a little discouraging right now, especially for everything, for public education, for democracy. This is a change by the people. The only way it's gonna happen is if we collect enough signatures. So for me, it feels, when everything else is feeling really bad, and some days it's feeling really, really bad, to me, this is something like, I can do this. I don't really like to go up and ask people for signatures, but I care so much about our public schools. I'll make myself uncomfortable and ask people to sign a freaking signature page, right?
Yeah.
Some people love to do it, I'm just saying, I'm not sure, it's not like my favorite thing to do, but I think once I'm doing it, I'll really like it, right? I'm just being honest. I also don't like to speak in front of a lot of people, but here I am doing it because I really care.
You're doing it well.
I really care about our public schools and I really care about our children. So we need to get a lot of signatures, by the way. So we're gonna need everyone here to get ready and think about how they might be able to support this. Hold on. So 34 of the 43 states that have an income tax have already moved to a graduated structure. Plus, the federal government actually has a graduated income tax. So it's time for Michigan to catch up. Am I right? So the plan to win is that we need to collect 700,000 signatures, not just us. I think what's beautiful is that AFT Michigan is on, they're meeting, they're planning.